in accountability, like we teach on this series, I mean, it's like, he should have been asking me, weekly, how are you doing with this kind of temptation?
All that time when I wanted to go to somebody and tell them about it, and I was afraid of their reaction, I would have gotten just exactly the opposite reaction. And today as a pastor, when somebody shares with me, I immediately affirm them that how sorry I am that they are going through this, and that I can relate to how difficult it is to lead a secret life of secret sin.
Can I ask you, what are you doing to counter this flood of sexual information we have in our country that's just inundating our churches? What are you doing personally? What are you doing as a church? I'd like to share some of the things we're doing actually in our church to hold him accountable, and the other staff, and the people in our church. It's so open, and we're being so honest about the problem that the church is growing like crazy because people can see that we are genuine. We are doing something that's so key. We're permeating our church with a message of safety and feeling secure with each other. So we actually are encouraging openness and confession, where they're not going to be slammed or criticized or, oh, I can't believe you. Yeah. There's a spirit there of that, which I'm going to elaborate on, but that's actually what we're doing, and part of what we're doing.
And the two areas where leaders are typically not allowed to struggle would be money and sex.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's any hint of that, any discussion of that, hey, I can be a lover of money, or hey, I can get greedy, or hey, I can struggle with lust.
Right.
Gary's an elder at our church, and I know that I could come to him at any point, at any time, and say, I'm struggling in this area. And to know that temptation's not sin, and to know that we struggle with this, that I want help before. But a lot of guys and ladies who feel trapped,
they have no one to go to.
They have no one to go to. And so some of the practical steps we've been taking as a church, I know is first, it starts with me. That I'm very open with the congregation with the struggle I have just as a typical
and your wife.
Man. And then that's where it goes to next. Amy and I have shared openly about this. She is my #1 accountability partner. I know a lot of leaders go, oh, you should have a guy only as your accountability partner. But for areas I know, the biggest area, the primary tool of sexual addiction, what feeds that today is the internet. I know of almost every guy that I know of struggling in this area is struggling because of how easy it is to access off the internet. And so, Amy knows I don't have any computers in the house that aren't open, sitting on the kitchen table. We use software like Covenant Eyes, that protects us, and a great program to help be held accountable to your spouse. We actually at the church, every staff member, all of us have the freedom at any time of the day. I can walk into another staff member's office and check out their computer history. They can walk into mine and check it out. We've hired a computer guy to come in randomly and check us out. All of these are just safeguards that we've put in place to say, hey, we're open about this struggle that all men have. We're open about the addictive nature of our sexuality, that we can tend to go that way, and we just want to keep each other protected.
And we have small groups, which is the essence, because listen to what you get with small groups, and you probably have those in your church already, but I love talking about this because that's really been my whole life, and in the marriage area. And so you get accountability, which once a week in someone's home, someone's going to ask you how you doing in this area, or whatever you're doing in your small group. But then you have support, and that's really the key. You go to a group where people love you. We found that you get reparented in a small group. So if you grew up in an abusive home, you grew up in something that actually causes you to be more towards the addictive personality and maybe the sexual area, or you're maybe lusting more because of what happened between you and your dad or your mom. Small groups actually reparent us. They actually train us on how to be a husband and a wife just by the interaction that we have with each other. But the greatest thing you have to have in a small group in a church, in your home. This is actually the essence of all loving relationships. This is it. You have to create a safe atmosphere. You have to have a verbal, or we have written commitments that when you get into a small group or you join this church, we encourage you to set as the foundation of your marriage and your family the atmosphere of safety. Because here's the reason. The way God has designed us in our brain, we are actually genetically designed to connect to other people in a deep, loving relationship. Actually, loving God and others, and two greatest commandments. God designed us for that. But guess what? You will not connect in a loving relationship with someone you don't feel safe with. If you feel like you're going to be judged, or they're going to demand that you change, or if listen to this one. If you're not lovingly connected to someone and you don't feel safe, then you're going to disconnect from that person. Well, the problem with that is that all addictions are the result of weak relationships. The reason is because we're all designed like with a bucket to be filled with God's love and the love of others. And when when that bucket is low and level, then we want to fill it with something. So we're going to find one of the 300 different addictions. And sexual is one of the biggest ones in our country. We try to use sex to be filled up, and we can be filled up for about an hour, sometimes 10 minutes, and then the emptiness is still there. So if you create a safe relationship, then what happens is that you will tend to naturally open up your heart to another person, and best friend, deep relationship stuff just happens automatically. If you don't have safety in your church, if your pastor doesn't feel safe, if your congregation doesn't feel safe, you don't have the kind of love that God designed us to have.
And you're an elder in our church, and every time we have an elders meeting, the second question you always ask, because the first question, every elders meeting you start off with is,
are we paying you enough?
Yeah, so that's why you'll always be an elder at our church.
Right.
But the second question you ask me, and it's for 5 years now in elders meetings, has meant the most to me. And I've talked to so many friends in ministry that don't get this opportunity, but you say, how safe do you feel at Woodland Hills?
Yeah.
I mean, how many guys get asked that question? Do you feel safe at Woodland Hills? Do you feel you can share your struggles and what's going on? Yeah. And I'm able to interact with you on that for a little bit. And then you say, oh, this is very convicting. How safe does Woodland Hills feel with you?
Yeah, that's right.
And I just think about the places and the churches where that environment and leadership has not been created.
You've changed in 5 years, just amazingly opened your heart to the church, because it is a safe environment.
So what does a leader do where there's not a caring leadership team?
You have to get one. If you don't have it at home, if you don't have that relationship with your wife, your kids. I actually raised my best friends, 3 of my children. They're my best friends. And then I got to raise my mentors, because my 2 sons are really my main mentors. Yeah. And so they're my accountability group. And in fact, I've even had both sons say, Dad, if I ever hear you're watching pornography on the internet, I know how to check what you've been watching for as long, and you think you can hide it. And so, you know what, even 4 or 5 years ago, way before I experienced my own freedom, that used to bother me. I used to think, I'm not going to ever do this because my kids will find out, and I would really be embarrassed if my sons that I'm in ministry with found out those things. But I am so excited about this program that you're watching, because freedom does begin here, because you're going to learn how to just be so free, way beyond your wildest imagination.
And the other thing I appreciate when you're always asking me about safety is that in so many ways, you know, the expectations that are placed on leaders today in the church, exactly. Everybody wants you at every event and every function and there for counseling at a moment's notice, and that takes you away from home. Exactly. Every time you go and do something for church.
But you feel safe in that area because we're not demanding that.
Well, and whenever I feel that expectation, I come to you, you're like, hey, you don't need to be doing that. You know, right. Because your primary concern for me is that the vacuum of tenderness and intimacy isn't created at my home. I mean, you want to make sure that I have a great marriage.
Exactly.
That there's intimacy
Two
and
precious
security.
Kids.
And as a leader, you are constantly sending me back home, because you know if that vacuum's ever created there and there's no safety, I'm going to bring that into the church, and I'm going to act out on the church in that way.
Yeah.
And that safety has probably been my greatest accountability, is that I have cultivated a marriage. The first 7 years of my marriage wasn't that great. My wife didn't have safety because she was convinced that ministry and being a success and being seen as a success was more important than she was. And that's when I started hanging around you, and you've mentored me now for 5 or 6 years on the importance of safety and relationships, and that the home relationship, the marriage, is probably one of my greatest prevention tools from sexual addiction.
Yes, and she knows, Amy, your wife, knows that she can come to me anytime she wants and tell me how you're doing.
And you ask her at church on Sundays with great regularity.
How's he doing? Because just think of this. Married, if your wife loves you and you love her, and your sexual life is healthy, and you're getting along with your kids and things are going great at home, you don't have it. You can counsel almost anybody in church, and it's not going to cause you to have problems. And then if you're, in addition to that, if you are free in Christ and free with the power of His Word in your life, and you have a great marriage at home, hey, you're set. And if and your church is safer and safer, whoa, we're going to see a revival.
And you talked about what you grew up in. Same thing with me. I grew up in a very conservative home and church for 20 years. We didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about sexuality. So now that the church is facing, and it's nothing new, we've dealt with it for 30 or 40 years, but we've kind of just stuffed it or swept it under the rug. Now this area of sexual addiction that's causing leaders to fall and is wiping out large numbers of leaders, we now... it's taken me 4 years. What am I, 33? So for the first 29 years of my life, I didn't feel comfortable talking about this. I didn't feel comfortable sharing. You're the first one that really told me, hey, start sharing this.
Exactly.
And there was some awkwardness. There was some embarrassment, discussion going on. And now, boy, we talk about it. And now the church, you walk into small groups and you're like, should I be hearing that at a church? But it's appropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's healthy.
We have to face it, because it is a major problem. And I'm thrilled that you're involved in this program, because we need the freedom for the world to see how we love each other and that we are free in Him.
And my heart breaks for the leader who's watching this leader's disc right now, and you don't have safety at your church. You don't have an environment where you're able to start talking about this. And I guess my question would be, what are you going to do to make the approach? What are you going to do to take the initiative? What are you going to do to say, okay, this is a huge risk. This is a risk that could cost me my role in this church. But I'm telling you, your life, your following of Jesus Christ, your marriage, your children, there are so many other relationships at stake other than just your role as a church leader. That all is a byproduct. Your leadership is a byproduct of your following Jesus Christ. My challenge to you is to find accountability. My challenge to you is to go to your spouse and say, what do you need? What do you desire from me in the area of accountability? What is an appropriate meeting venue when I'm dealing with someone of the opposite sex? What do you want to see on the computer? Can I put Covenant Eyes on my computer and have an email sent to you if I go somewhere? All of this creates massive amounts of safety and security in your marriage. The challenge for all of us as leaders is to make sure that we're not an island out there trying to kick an addiction, trying to be done with an addiction on our own, because we know that relationships is where true life change happens. And so our encouragement to you as you continue to watch this, and in the next segment, you're going to hear Gary's water to wine story that has motivated and challenged thousands of men around the world. As you listen to his testimony, I want to encourage you and challenge you to be thinking about what you're going to do and the steps you're going to put into your marriage, into your home, and into your church to help you find freedom from sexual addiction if you're sexually addicted, or to protect you from ever going down the road of sexual addiction.